Now, let's get to the present story. So I've been going the last 4 times, a delegation based in Seattle, Washington, called Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility. We have a very patient coordinator who coordinates with the Israelis and with Gaza Community Mental Health Program. It takes 2 or 3 months of bureaucracy to allow our entry into Gaza. The last 2 times, after 2 months of application, we finally got approval just a week before our departure. So we all hustle and get plane tickets and fly into Ben Gurion Airport. So we spend the night in a place called Neve Shalom. It's south of Tel Aviv. It's on the way to Gaza. It's about 1 hour from the border with Gaza. There are a lot of Israeli peace activists who partner with Arab American or Arab Israelis or Palestinians who live in Israel. And they have this beautiful oasis. And it really reminds me of, I mean, most of Israel, Palestine reminds me of California, the Galilee's like Northern California, Southern Israel's like, or the Negev's like Southern California. Parts of it look like Nevada. So here we are in this beautiful oasis. Of course, a lot of villages that used to exist here in 1948 were destroyed. But then we drive an hour south and all of a sudden the reality changes. Here we are approaching Eretz checkpoint from the Israeli side. And so this is the monstrosity of a terminal that has been created. It's been in operation for almost 10 years now. It's built to really allow 50,000 people to cross, but in reality only a dusting cross. So the Gaza Strip is 360 square kilometers, and it has 1.8 million people at present. In reality, it's a lot less. It's about a third of the land is not operational because there's a 300-meter security zone on the periphery that Israel maintains that you really risk being shot if you're standing there. We were bringing in all kinds of medical equipment, so they helped us haul the medical equipment. And you walk, and you walk, and you walk. And on either side, it's totally devegetated. Okay, see, there's a mounted submachine gun, right? Or a machine gun, whatever it is. You can see there's guard towers everywhere. There's all these communication towers. There's actually a blimp above, also a spy blimp. Now, as I mentioned, there's 300 meters of devegetation. Now, there used to be olive groves, citrus groves, all kinds of agriculture. But we are told by the Israelis that Qassam missiles have been fired from these areas. So the security zone comes at the cost of the Palestinians. So 300-meter buffer. Now, you do see some shepherds with some sheep there. And the problem is that 65% of the arable agricultural land in Gaza is on the periphery. So when the Israelis do this, they destroy the agricultural industry.
Is that inside the wall or outside?
It's inside the wall. It's not on the Israeli side. It's at the expense of the Gazans, not at the expense of the Israelis. So those shepherds also risk being shot. But where do they graze their sheep? There's limited land. You can see some olive trees in the distance, but there used to be trees all the way to the border. So when you finally get to the Palestinian Authority checkpoint, there's this sign here that says something about countrymen don't become a collaborator. Of the Gazans who are allowed to cross into Israel, a lot of them are for medical reasons. Some are business people. There's all kinds of different ways of pressuring them to become informants. You want your dad to get medical care in Israel? Well, then you need to tell us some information we don't know. There's that sort of thing. There's blackmail. This goes on in the West Bank, too. There's all kinds of intimidation and pressure to try to get people to flip and betray their countrymen. So there's a warning sign there by the Palestinian Authority to tell people not to be a collaborator. I told you there was the Palestinian Authority checkpoint. Then we take a taxi to the Hamas checkpoint. This is the Hamas checkpoint. which received F-16 or some sort of missile attack last summer. So actually when I went, this was a November picture. When I came back in March, this building was gone, and now there's metal prefab caravan-like structures. So we go from Southern California to this as we're entering Gaza. I don't know, there's probably 1,000 people in this apartment complex alone who have been affected by this. And I have other pictures that show that there are actually people still living in these structures because they have no place to go. Probably 98% of the people in Gaza are Muslims. There are Christians there, and I've been to the Catholic Church in Gaza. But yeah, they're mostly Muslims. These are probably high school girls. When I used to go in 1985, and most of the people in Gaza worked in Israel, you'd see girls in ponytails and blue jeans and Western dress. The more you isolate populations, the more they go back to their roots. And so things are much more orthodox than they used to be in 1985. But the other thing that's striking about Gaza is that over 50% of the population is under 17. So there's a lot of children. So here's our medical delegation from November. There's Dr. Haynes. He's the guy that most of these pictures are from. There's me. Dr. Grant O'Keefe is a trauma surgeon from Harborview. Don Melman is Tampa, Florida neurosurgeon. He's Jewish. Jerry's our master of getting us in. And there's Ned. He's a yoga instructor. His wife, Maxine, is a pediatric nurse practitioner. They're both Jewish. Ralph's a neurosurgeon. John Van Enwyk is a Olympia, Washington International Trauma Treatment Program. But we've also had members who are autism specialists and various other things. The delegation, you know, it's different people. Again, there's been 10 delegations since 2009. I've been on 4 of them. And I do a lot of work at Al-Shifa Medical Center. It's the major medical center. So it's like Vancouver General or Harborview Medical Center for the Gaza Strip. And this past summer, they received most of the casualties, although every hospital received casualties. What's this? That's an ambulance. So here's an ambulance that was hit directly. The 3 emergency medical technicians were killed. This is not the first time I've seen ambulances that have taken direct hits from the Israelis. I've seen it previously in Gaza at a different location in 2009. I've seen them in Ramallah. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate attempt. This is a deliberate violation of medical neutrality. What else do I want to say? Okay, so Stephen Harper, Barack Obama, John Kerry, and a lot of our senators and congressmen in the United States say Israel has a right to defend itself. I'm gonna show you pictures that question that notion as to whether this has anything to do with Israel defending itself. So again, our objective was to empower the Palestinian physicians. So they have 2 medical schools in Gaza. They have plenty of doctors. In fact, they have so many doctors, they have unemployed doctors because the infrastructure is not allowed to grow because of the siege and the blockade. What they're lacking is postgraduate medical education. So Dr. Bob and I teach advanced cardiac life support. Dr. O'Keefe, the trauma surgeon from Harborview, goes in the operating room and he shows them state-of-the-art surgical techniques for difficult operations. Again, another Dr. Cowan, who's a pediatrician, who's an autism specialist, is helping them develop their autism program. So again, advanced cardiac life support has to do with cardiac arrest and management of pre-arrest situations to prevent cardiac arrest, including shocking people if they have cardiac standstill. We also taught at the medical school at Islamic University. As I mentioned, there's 2 medical schools. One is Islamic University, which, if you want to boil it down, is pretty much affiliated with Hamas. And the other one is Al-Azhar University. It's right across the street, and that one's pretty much affiliated with Fatah. It's more secular. This one's more Islamic. And it's a big deal for them. So our arrival was advertised far and wide. So here we're teaching the senior medical students that are finishing their 6th year. And you can see the feeling of appreciation in their faces. And it makes me feel tearful because, you know, these people just they feel like the world has forgotten about them. You know, and they even say that you're our only hope. You know, you come in and we're reminded that there are people out there who care, because they just feel like the world's abandoned them. And every 2 years they're under attack, and there's all these empty promises, and nothing happens. So when you actually do show up and teach a course, you can just feel that there's a lot of gratitude. So some women wear the hijab, and a few wear the niqab. I have to tell a story, though. With this ACLS, there's a disc, you know, that's proprietary information, and everywhere we went, they were trying to copy this disc of videos, and Shifa IT guy couldn't do it. The medical school IT guy at Islamic University couldn't do it. I go to the nursing school, and a woman in a niqab who's the IT person shows up. She says, "I want to have a try." And I'm like, "Go ahead. You get 1 hour. Nobody else could do it. Lots of luck." Well, she comes back in an hour, and she did it. So moral of the story is never underestimate the power of a woman in a niqab. That's what I learned. This is Dr. Khamis Alessi. I've known him for 12 years. Do you know him? No. He is a rehabilitation doctor. He now teaches at an Islamic University, but recently he was the administrator of the Al-Wafa Rehabilitation Hospital, where I have been visiting since 2003. I've given lectures there on trauma, introduction to advanced trauma life support, for example. Here in 2009, you can see that it's been sprayed by Israeli submachine gun. It's only about 600 meters from the Israeli border. It's in the Al-Shajaya district. It was hit by white phosphorus in 2009, but the hospital was still standing. Here's Dr. Khamis showing off his latest edition in 2009, which included state-of-the-art rehabilitation, you know, aquatherapy. Here's a young man, here's a school teacher who was shot in the neck by an Israeli sniper, and he's quadriplegic now, or what? Here's a young boy who was a pedestrian hit by a car. Because of the overcrowded streets in Gaza, you have pedestrian car accidents, so he's paralyzed from the waist down. Here's another man that was shot by an Israeli sniper. Fortunately, the bullet only grazed his spinal cord, and so after several months of rehabilitation, he's able to stand up or sit up, and he's getting some of his motor skills back. Okay, so this is this fine rehabilitation hospital in 2009, and this is what they did to it last summer. You heard about hospitals that have been destroyed. So Israel has a right to defend itself? What does this have to do with any defense? I don't think anywhere in the Geneva Conventions does it say that it's acceptable to destroy hospitals. This is unbelievable, though. I mean, you can see all the hospital equipment in the ruins. And I can't even, when we drove up there, I couldn't quite, I mean, I remember the campus, right? But you drive up and you can't, everything's flattened in that whole neighborhood. And it all looks like the moon, and you can't even tell what you're looking at. This is downtown Gaza City. This building was the Ministry of Finance. Destroy the economy, right? So, they used smart bombs, laser-guarded smart bombs. They destroyed this one building, and all the buildings around it are fine. So if they want to do surgical strikes, they can. But this is the neighborhood of Al-Shajaiya in East Gaza City. It's about the eastern third of Gaza City, and the whole neighborhood is like this. Well, this is actually Beit Hanun, but Shajaiya, all the periphery neighborhoods along the border with Israel got this kind of treatment. This is not surgical strikes. This is November, But I went back there in March, and the pictures are pretty much the same. There's been no rebuilding, and we're going to get into that a little bit. Well, let's get into it right now. The UN, after this conflict, after 51 days of carnage, John Kerry went to Cairo with all the, the Israelis and the Egyptians. Of course, were the Palestinians represented? No, they never get to be involved in decisions about their future. And the world community pledged $5.4 billion in reconstruction aid. To date, as of March, only $240 million has been delivered. So that's about a 25th of what's been pledged. I mean, same thing after Cast Leg. Hillary Clinton went to Sharm el-Sheikh, the beautiful resort in Egypt, and they pledged all this money, and then it never materialized. So they get this kind of treatment over and over again. And you can see the only reconstruction you see is like this, where just the local people have been pulling bricks out to try to make makeshift shelters. There are children who have died of hypothermia this winter because of lack of proper shelter. It doesn't snow in Gaza, but they get the cold rains just like Vancouver. If you're out on the streets here, with the cold rains even worse than the snow, as far as how it chills your body, little babies, several of them died of hypothermia this winter because of inadequate shelter. So, again, Barack Obama, what does this have to do with Israel defending itself? And when you go to a place like this, your brain is saying, you have this surreal feeling. I mean, there you are in the middle of it all, and you're having trouble believing what your eyes are showing you. You're like, this is some sort of Chuck Norris movie set, right? No, this is real. And I can go back to my nice warm hotel in Gaza City, but these people are living like this all through the winter, day after day after day. I went back in March and I saw this same guy, and he's still living in the same structure with his father. Let's talk about homeless a little bit. So when the attacks occurred, 500,000 people were displaced. When the attacks ended, 100,000 were homeless. Up to now, 60,000 are still homeless. 40,000 have been absorbed by extended families, by UN agency, by temporary shelters. I will show you some of that. But even these 40,000 that are not officially homeless anymore, they're living in overcrowded conditions. Sometimes a room like this has 60 people, and they're sleeping in shifts, and they have one bathroom, and the hygiene is horrible, but they're not homeless because they kind of have a home. Other people are living in tents like this, or living in partially damaged apartments because they have nowhere else to go. I'll show more of that. Then there are UN schools. During the attack, almost all the schools became refugee shelters. After the war, they got it down to 29 UN schools out of 89 that are being used to house the homeless. And again, horribly overcrowded conditions. That causes other problems. Before this attack, the schools had double shifts. That is, one set of kids came at 5:30 in the morning till 11, the next kids 11:30 till 4 or 5, something like that. Now they have to triple shift the classrooms in order for all the kids to get some classroom time. So the UN's overburdened. Who pays for all this? How does this affect the mind of a child if this is normal? So this child, that's her grandfather. He's a farmer on the periphery. All of his land was bulldozed. All of his crops. I mean, remember, it was Ramadan. It was the end of July, early August. The harvest was imminent, and all of his lands get bulldozed, looking for tunnels. And there were tunnels, and they found some of them. I don't know if they found all of them. I doubt it. But his whole labor all spring gets totally destroyed, and he has nothing to show, and he has to rehabilitate the land again. What if you're 6 years old and you've been through 3 major conflicts in your life? Are you going to be normal? What if you're nutritionally deficient on top of it? What if your place of worship, your mosque, has been destroyed? This is not the only mosque in Gaza that was destroyed. There's probably, I forget the numbers, but there's probably about 15 or 20 that were destroyed. Some of these mosques have been destroyed, like this one has been destroyed over and over and over again. Now, if we blew up a synagogue anywhere in the West, or a church, do you think it might be in the New York Times maybe? Why is this not newsworthy? And then there's children. Gaza Community Mental Health Program, the hallways are full of these pictures of traumatized children who, this child on the right is the world of war, and on the left is the world of peace. You know, and you can see there's a person bleeding out, dying here, and everybody's crying, and everything's destroyed, and there's barbed wire, and there's an Israeli armored personnel vehicle, and the land is barren, and here the land is green, and the sun's coming up, and and there were all kinds of pictures that just tear your heart out, and these are just young children that are trying to express what they know. You've heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. In Gaza, they call it chronic stress disorder because it's never post, it's ongoing. People are just saying it's just a matter of time. A lot of people think another attack is coming this summer. We will see. I hope they're wrong. But then there's orphans. This Amal Institute for Orphans has, we were told prior to the war, there were 23,000 orphans in Gaza, defined as children who have lost both parents or who have lost their father. So that's the definition of orphan in Gaza. I went out with this group called Palestine Medical Relief Society. I've gone out with them many times when I've been in Gaza. They get out into the disadvantaged areas and do outreach primary care to people who don't have resources. Dr. Mustafa Barghouti in Ramallah is part of the group that organized this. They have this in the West Bank too that goes out to Palestinian villages. If you're a health professional and you can hook up with these guys, it's some of the best way to get out of the tourist areas and see what's really going on in the back places. And so they open up in somebody's house and the hallway lines up with customers, and they end up seeing like 30 patients in 3 or 4 hours. No medical records are kept. They just do the best they can. And then they do house calls, like this woman who was in a market on July 20th last summer with her 8-year-old daughter, and all of a sudden she was hit by a missile fired from either the Israeli Navy or F-16 or who knows. And she was immediately taken to a hospital where they had to do an open operation to stench bleeding in her abdomen, and she had comminuted fractures with 3rd and 4th degree burns. So she did receive transfer to Jerusalem to Al-Maqasid Medical Center, and there she had external fixation, skin grafting. So now she's back in Gaza. It's November, so it's 3 months after the attack. Her 8-year-old daughter died in the attack immediately. And she doesn't remember the attack because she had concussion and so all I remember is the way she starts her talk. And she's still getting daily wound care, and she's still bedridden. So how a moment can change your life. I went out, this is March, just a few weeks ago, I went out to another remote area in central Gaza, which was probably the most rural area of Gaza I've ever seen. And so a lot of these people are farmers. And of course, here in Canada and the United States, we have a private room. It's one-on-one with the patient. We're very careful about confidentiality. And we keep copious medical records that are legally defensible in court. Well, there it's 30 patients in 3 hours, and everybody's in the same room, and there's no privacy, and you do the best you can do. But that's what they can do, so that's what they do. Housing. These are not homeless people, by the way. These are people that have a home. And the UN provides these corrugated metal housing that leaks like a sieve when it rains hard. in November. Then there's apartment buildings like this where people are still living there, right, but right next door. So this would be condemned if a building like this existed in Vancouver, right? But where else can these people go? How come there's no reconstruction happening? Well, because, and actually they've brought in a little concrete and they've been able to repair partially damaged homes, but the homes that are completely damaged they haven't touched because they don't have enough resources. Well, Israel's very careful not to allow anything that can be used for dual use. So if any of this concrete is going to be used to build tunnels, then nobody gets any concrete. Okay, so, Israel's security comes at the expense of everybody else's security. Well, here's some tents. And again, it's a rainy, cold winter, and they have to live like this all winter long. And these are not the homeless. These are the ones that aren't. And here's all the bulldozing of the farm area in El Hozah, looking for tunnels. But okay, so here's the Islamic University Administration Center. So this is the university administration taking a direct hit from an F-16. Now, Stephen Harper, what does this have to do with Israel defending itself? Please explain. So you're in the administration's building. He got his master's degree at Fort Collins, Colorado. So he probably supports Hamas even, but he doesn't look that scary to me. I don't know why this guy's such a threat to the rest of us, but you walk down the hall and you can fall right to your death here if you're not careful. So what does this have to do with anybody's security? What about a kindergarten? This was built by Save the Children International. So who's going to rebuild this and who's going to pay for it? So this guy, he's showing me his smartphone of the house he was building. This is the before picture in Khan Yunis. This actually is that used to be the Gush Katif settlement. So it's one of the most pristine parts of Gaza. So this is before, and this is after the bomb went off and blew away his house. This wasn't the direct hit from the bomb. This was the implosion wave, or whatever you call it, the shock wave. The man was standing here and he was killed, we are told. Domestic violence is a serious problem now. Imagine half the population is unemployed, a lot of men who have nothing to do, who can't protect their children, overcrowded conditions, 60 to a room, a lot of stress, a lot of frustration. Domestic violence has been on the rise because this is their reality. But again, half the population's under 17. A lot of adults have ruined lives who have no hope. But what about the children? What kind of childhood is this like? What is he going to aspire to? There's a lot of children that are aspiring to be martyrs because they don't see anything ever getting better, a lot of them are cute as the dickens, too. Well, we certainly take donations. If you just Google Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility and you want to donate to our projects, that's something you could do. Certainly, any of you who go in and out of the West Bank and Israel should continue to try to attempt to enter Gaza, to try to raise awareness with your representatives that people should be able to come and go. The Mediterranean has always had open ports since the millennia, and this is the only time in history that people aren't allowed to come and go by sea out of any Mediterranean port. That should be raised with your politicians. So there's lots of things you can do, and certainly I'm hoping this presentation raises awareness.